New York City, 2110. It's been a while since the fall of the U.S. empire, and by extension, the general decline of much of the world. The massive influence of U.S. economic policy, along with the corresponding materialistic, inefficient, and wasteful values born out of the consumption-based growth economy, began to reach its physical limits in the mid-21st century. Until that point, the race towards global industrialization continued unabated, with the world still pining for the so-called American dream, not computing that if the entire world acted with the same waste patterns as the U.S., we would have needed 4 more Earths worth of resources just to keep it all going. What happened? Well, there were 3 nails in the coffin of societal collapse. The synergy of these issues compounded each other into a vicious storm, and by the time the Earth hit a population of 8 billion, right before the Third World War, global unemployment reached levels of 65%, every government on Earth was bankrupt to each other, and the core hydrocarbon energy sources saw destabilizing scarcity. And while China did win the war, what resolution was achieved didn't last long. The cancer and health epidemics alone in Asia and beyond rose to catastrophic proportions, with 1/3 of the planet still uninhabitable today due to industrial pollution. Today, the global population has fallen by 40% due to scarcity and disease. As far as the energy crisis, the early 21st century made tremendous progress in understanding renewable, sustainable energy systems. We were learning on paper how to stop our use of inherently scarce, polluting energy stores in the earth, realizing the almost unlimited abundance of our regenerative universe, an energy income that could provide for everyone many times over if we only moved fast enough to create the proper infrastructure. Unfortunately, such a transition attempt was met with great resistance by financial interests. You see, there was this thing called the free market, which was far from free, in truth. It was a war and elitist protection system, and the bigger and more profitable an industry became, the less financial incentive existed to alter it. Money was the goal of this game, not sustainability or efficiency. And the fact was, we needed to move fast, utilizing the remaining hydrocarbon resources to create new sustainable energy infrastructure. It was a race against global population increases and hence needs. And sadly, we failed, passing the point of no return, as once the true scarcity of our hydrocarbon resources became understood, social destabilization and panic rapidly commenced to further barricade. And what little progress did take place was rapidly destroyed thereafter by the water and energy wars. At the same time, the world faced the largest unemployment rates in history. Long considered a Luddite myth, the exponential increase in machine automation in the 21st century created a powerful acceleration of industrial productivity at ever cheaper rates, displacing workers more rapidly than technology could actually create new jobs. Forward thinkers saw a great shift in the architecture of society. Perhaps the ancient idea of earning a living could be replaced with living a life. We could see the new capacity to create an abundance to meet the needs of every human being on Earth, 8 billion and beyond. But sadly, this prospect met the same fate as our energy ambitions. The corporations, locked into a manner of thought which viewed mechanization as not a means for abundance, but rather a means to save even more money in the process of production, set up a violent clash. Not only a clash between workers and owners, but, ironically, a clash of system functions. For capitalism was faced with its most grand contradiction, where suddenly labor could exist with increasingly less human involvement, and hence the constant pursuit of cost efficiency for profit inevitably meant that less money would be put into circulation through wages, and so the system ran itself down into an ever-weakening slump. Noticing this, the cry of some was to stop mechanization, knowing the economy literally needed jobs by design. Others performed activism to try and convince the world that it was time to adapt, to simply give humanity what it needed, to bypass the market. Why should we invent more jobs to waste human life just to keep this system going? Yet, of course, they were bashed in the media, dismissed as socialist upstarts and freedom-hating communists, trying to corrupt the supposed liberty of what was nothing more than a religion, the all-seeing market. And by the time the corporate-controlled governments couldn't look the other way any longer, the momentum of anger and dismay was too much. The unions went on strike, and the cry for revolution exploded. The Luddites blamed technology for the problems, the businesses blamed government interference, the counterculture blamed idealized conspiracies, with few realizing that it was a system failure, a natural evolution of our culture which demanded respect and adaptation. And the third and perhaps most absurd of all social plagues was the illusion of financial debt. It's an interesting historical note that for some reason, the mafia-style, organized crime mode of the market was never really accepted as a legitimate consequence, when it was in fact a ruling ethos inherent in the competitive, scarcity-driven nature of the system. Centuries of denial can be found in the endless economic textbooks of this now failed model, saying that if any such behavior did occur, it was an anomaly, a corruption rather than a core characteristic expected of the system itself. Within this propensity, a debt system emerged. Whether structurally intended as a force of class warfare or not, the system served the elite quite well for a little while. Every form of currency produced was created out of debt and loaned at interest to the governments, businesses, and individuals. Yet, it was a mathematical impossibility for this debt to ever be repaid, as there was always more debt in the global economy than money to pay it back due to the profit mechanism of interest being charged. And while this allowed for a surplus of cheap labor that further divided the classes, moving from 1% owning 40% of the planet's wealth in the early 21st century to now 1% owning 70%, the viral nature of the mechanism got the best of everyone in the end. To expand the delusion, global banking institutions were then installed, to loan money made out of debt, again, to the now bankrupt countries, only to watch these world banks fail over time as well. It was the greatest inadvertent scam of all time, a pyramid scheme on steroids, destined to fail for all. And by the time of World War III, all the countries had defaulted to each other, and the global banking system collapsed. Of course, during these trials, the illusion of so-called democracy still persisted. Equally as religious and mythological in its understanding as the so-called free market, everyone turned to their representative government, a mafia constituency to be sure, intimately in bed with the corporate financial interests, which, by virtue of the ruling ethic of social and class warfare and competition, had little structural incentive to care about the vast majority of the world. And so it went. Not too pretty, huh? Well, while this future may be a little extreme in its presentation, keep in mind this is what the trends suggest. However, I think it's time we take a positive view of the future, one that's actually quite possible if we were intelligent enough to adjust accordingly. What the shit? Where am I? I must have dialed wrong. Oh wait, we went in the past to the 2013 Zeitgeist Media Festival. Sweet. Oh, and there's Kelly Mays doing her thing.
If we do these things when the tree is green, oh please, what will happen when it dies? I create and know somewhere deep in the unseen is the key that will open up our eyes. If we do these
So, what do you think the future is going to be like in, say, 100 years?
Well, I think we could go down two paths. The first would be that we continue to sort of build on top of this cancer consciousness separation, every human being for themselves kind of a thing. I don't necessarily like that idea. But I do think there's another direction that we could go. I would love to see people working together in community. I think we're missing the whole kind of tribal element. As Mouse would say, I would love everybody to live in tree houses. I mean, I really believe that we have the technology to deal with every imaginable problem on the earth. We have plants that can bioremediate, like sunflowers, for example. We have everything that's available to us to fix all of these problems, to create incredible abundance, to not have to deal with this ridiculously corrupt monetary system.
Ah, man, I hate to leave this sweet-ass festival. It really is amazing how the arts contribute to social development. And yes, life really should be a celebration, not a trial. But okay, let's get back to work. Los Angeles, 2110. What was once a sea of congested traffic and agitating urban sprawl in the early 21st century has been transformed into a model of efficiency and safety. The 9-to-5 workday tradition, which forced most of society to cram into gridlocked highways en route to a kind of covert slavery, is a distant memory of a new, highly advanced technological society. Contribution to society is no longer based on the narrow, selfish pursuit of personal gain. Money lost its use long ago as the foundational premise of its existence was outgrown. The culture finally realized that a basic, technical system of collaboration, sharing resources and ideas, would enable a highly abundant, sustainable, and stable world, unlike anything the market ethic of scarcity, competition, and class warfare could fathom. It was called the Great Transition, where the benefit of taking an Earth-wide system perspective, coupled with the application of basic physical and social science, set in motion a train of thought that transcended most everything we had considered normal in the early 21st century. And while it is far from perfect, the basic design to take care of everyone worked, while still structurally respecting the natural environment, unleashing a kind of human freedom and capacity for development never before seen. To understand how this new world emerged, we need to start by recognizing a trend which became apparent in the early 20th century. With humanity having spent the vast majority of existence under the veil of superstition, impending scarcity, and general elitism, the idea of not having enough to go around and the perpetuation of haves and have-nots appeared to be simply an immutable law of nature. War after war, genocide after genocide, it intuitively appeared that this was simply the way the human condition was to be. However, with the development of science and the notion of something called technical efficiency, a pattern began to emerge which set the stage for likely the most radical change in human societal operation in history. It was called ephemeralization, the ability to do more and more with less and less. As paradoxical as it may seem, our advancement in understanding how to use our planetary resources, in conjunction with the emerging laws of natural science, set in motion a pattern of conservation and efficiency where, over time, less and less materials, labor, and energy were needed to produce and execute more and more life-supporting processes. For example, the first computer built in the 1940s covered 1,800 square feet of floor space, weighed 30 tons, and consumed 160 kilowatts of electric power. Today, an inexpensive pocket-sized cell phone computes substantially faster, running on virtually nothing in comparison. Communication, which used to require enormous amounts of arduous copper wire to facilitate phone calls, has been replaced by lightweight satellites. Physical home construction, which took massive amounts of resources and labor, eventually evolved into using lightweight, prefabricated structures which could be assembled by automation using a fraction of the materials and labor as before, and yet were substantially stronger and durable. Even the core foundation of nutrition, agriculture, which since the start of the Neolithic period was bound to certain regions for certain climates and land propensities, saw a revolution in versatility, where soilless farming systems could provide organic food locally without pesticides, using less fertilization and with little energy wasted on transport. The very idea of globalization was a distant memory, along with the vast waste it created. In effect, no industry or sub-industry was amiss with this trend. Even labor itself, with the application of automation finally applied as the target means for production, exploded efficiency and capacity, with less and less human toil necessary over time. By the mid-21st century, even the idea of mass good production was also no more, as advancements in modular robotics and nanotechnology allowed for good production to exist on-site, on demand, in a kind of variety never before seen in capitalism. The idea of producing goods in mass and storing inventory was no more. In fact, most homes now had production rooms, which printed the basic clothes, household tools, and general needs right there on site. And on the efficiency grew, bringing the world into a condition of post-scarcity abundance, where, within the educational framework of natural law, respecting that there are indeed limits to growth and consumption, a new human value system emerged which gloried in its capacity to increase efficiency and maintain ecological balance and sustainability. Not only physical sustainability per se, but cultural sustainability. Taking care of everyone was not a poetic consequence. It was a core focus to create a form of earthly harmony unknown before. Of course, none of these transitions came easily. The market economy and those who profited most dogmatically tried to stop this advancement as the elitism they held dear was drawn into question. It took decades of activism and showing the world, including those of great power and wealth, that life could be much better for them as well, along with everyone else, and that the market system simply was incompatible with this new mode of optimized efficiency, an efficiency desperately needed to not only progress society, but save it. Oh, shit, I gotta get back. It's almost time for my favorite TV show.